asked by families what they should do if they're concerned that their child's progress is not adequate, is not meaningful. And there are several steps I think that parents can do to initially start the process of reviewing the progress their child is making. My name's Valerie. I'm a former special education teacher and administrator, and now I'm an educational advocate. And I give information to families so that they can advocate for their students on their own. But lots of families like to work with somebody. And if you would like to work with me, you can check in my description. There is a link to have a call with me to be able to go over what your child is going through right now in school, what's happening, what's working and what's not, and next steps you can take. Let's get started on what to do if you're concerned about the progress your child is making in school. So the first step is to identify the concern. Are you concerned about academics? Is it reading, writing, math? Are you concerned that your child is not growing in one of those areas? You might also have a concern in social studies or science, maybe in a special, like art. Your child is really struggling every single time they go to art, and there's other challenges that are arising because of that. That's all information that you can jot down to be able to have a conversation with the school. If you're looking specifically at something like reading or math, there might be iReady scores or Acadian scores you can look at. If your child is older and takes state testing, you can grab that information as well, keeping in mind those scores are all kind of a moment in time how your child is doing, but you should be seeing at least maintenance of skills, if not an increase in skills. And I say that because as your child grows, if they continue to be able to only do the same thing year over year, it will look like they're losing ground because they're expected to gain skills, if that makes sense. So gather up as much information as you can with looking at report cards, standardized scores, and any samples, work samples that you have. If you can see the work samples from 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade all kind of look the same, I would make sure to keep those together so that when you're having a conversation with the school, you have some data to present. Another area of need for some students is in the area of behavior, and behavior needs can look very different depending on the student. Behavior needs are not always really big behaviors or behaviors that are injurious to others. It can be something as simple as putting their head down every time it's a specific assignment, like math, for example. Or it can be constantly yelling out and causing disruption to the point that it's affecting their own learning as well as the learning of others. Maybe they always forget a pen or pencil, and so they're not able to get started, and the teacher is tired of giving them that. Maybe they always tear up their work. Maybe they hide under the table if they're a littler one. Maybe they leave the classroom. You might be heard of that referred to as elopement. So there could be a variety of things that are happening with behavior that are impacting their ability to show their academic ability in the classroom. With behavior needs, something that sometimes gets lumped into behavior, but it can also be under academics, would be executive functioning needs. Maybe as your child's getting older, they're no longer able to manage classwork and homework and projects and all of the things they need to do. That can be something that's talked about with the school as well. Explicitly teaching skills around executive functioning is absolutely something that can happen in schools. It's just a matter of everybody sitting down at the table and recognizing that needs to happen for your child. Another area that you should look to for information about progress your child is making is your child. Having a conversation with your child can go a long way in your ability to advocate for them, especially if they're in middle school or high school and they're struggling in maybe one academic area or they're having a hard time with behavior in a few different settings at school. Having a conversation with them can go a long way in your understanding of what's going on. Oftentimes we leave the student out of the conversation, and making sure that they have a voice is really important. It will also help you when you go into the school to be able to say, I talked to my child and this is what they're saying that they're having a hard time with. It can help the adults who work with your child at school start to gain a different perspective of what's going on potentially. So you've identified the area, 1 or 2 areas or topics that you really think need to be discussed with the school as far as progress not being made for your child. So once you have that identified, now it's time to be the detective. You have that idea because you've seen a few things. It's time to find more. Grab those standardized test scores if it's in an academic concern. Have report cards, have work samples if possible. Maybe you also have emails that can support the concerns around academics, or the emails might indicate that there's behavioral needs. You might also communicate with your child's teacher with like something like Parent Connect or Class Dojo. If there's information in there that also is hinting at concerns in certain areas that are affecting your child's ability to make progress in school, have that information as well. I have definitely worked with families where the information that was in Parent Connect or the school adopted platform to be able to text with parents helped identify an area of need. And that was able to move the team forward on finding supports to meet their need so the child could make progress. And they did. If your child has an IEP, you're also going to want to look at the goal progress that's been happening. So you're going to be receiving goal updates per what's on the IEP document. In some places, it's semester. In some places, it's every time a report card or a progress update is sent home. Make sure you check those progress updates and see if progress is being made. If when you look at those, progress is not being made, or I would say even worse, there's regression over time more than just in one cycle of updates, I think it's time to reach out and have a meeting with the team to make sure that the services are sufficient. Are the accommodations appropriate? What is going on? Does the goal need to be updated so your child can meet that goal? And if your child has a 504 plan, those accommodations that are put in place to meet the chronic health condition that your child has, affecting their success in school and their access to education, are those accommodations enough if your child is not making the progress that you and the team would expect to make? So make sure you have whatever intervention plan, 504 plan, IEP that your child has, make sure that's a part of your document collection as well. And then once you have all of those documents together and you're able to formulate your discussion points with the school, it's time to send an email requesting a meeting. I do think a meeting is really important if you're concerned about lack of progress for your child. Having everybody sit down together at a table, even just a 30-minute meeting, can go a long way in identifying potential supports that could help your child make the progress that you're looking for. And it's important to know your rights. If your child has an IEP and is not making progress, you have the right to have a meeting. If your child has a 504 plan and you're concerned that the accommodations are not sufficient to address their chronic health condition, requesting a meeting is very appropriate. And if your child has no intervention plan, you still have the right to request a meeting to discuss the lack of progress that you're seeing and see how you can collaborate with the school to ensure that they are going to be on the right trajectory to meet the educational progress goals that you and the school have for your child. It might be an intervention plan. It might just be written out that these specific goal points are what's being observed and looked for to make sure that your child is able to make progress without a more formalized plan. So you've got the meeting set up and you're ready to go in and have a discussion with the team. I do think it's important to put down some questions that you might want to ask or some talking points so that you can stay really focused in the meeting, because meetings can become very emotional very quickly. So let's talk about some questions that I think are great that you can ask in a meeting. One is, I'm wondering about, and then whatever it is. It's a really great way to ask an open-ended question. There's no accusation or you're not leading anything. You're just really asking a question about a specific area that you have as a concern. Another question that I hear often in IEP meetings from families that I think is really good and can be asked in any meeting is, can you tell me what that looks like for my child during their school day? So if a teacher says, well, your child's just choosing not to do work, can you tell me what that looks like in your classroom? You might hear that it's whenever they introduce independent math, your child is choosing to not do work. Is it that they're choosing, or is it that they don't know how to do the work? That would be your follow-up question. A few more questions that you can ask would be things like, can you show me the data you have on my child's progress? This is the information that I have. So you're presenting what you have and you're seeing if maybe there's something that they have that you weren't aware of. Maybe you can also ask them how you can reinforce or support what they're doing at school, at home. For a lot of students, this is really important, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're sitting down and doing a worksheet with your child, but it could mean that you're making sure there's a great space in the house for your child to be able to practice their reading comprehension skills by reading a book. Or maybe you're just making sure there's space for them to do math and you just check in like, hey, I wanted to let you know I cleared that table. You can do your math work there. You're not telling them to get started right away, but you're letting them know where they can do their work. Another great question to ask at the end of the meeting is, if progress isn't being made for my child, what are the next steps? So if your child has no 504 plan or IEP and everybody's just coming together to brainstorm what can be done next to support your child, I would ask specifically, What is the updates that you should expect to receive? What are the updates? Is it every 4 to 6 weeks you'll receive updates and they're reviewing things on their own side for their response to intervention or RTI or multi-tier system of support, MTSS model? Those are great questions you can ask. And then I've talked a lot about academics. I think if you're looking at social emotional or behavioral, you can ask what kind of data they're going to be looking at to see if progress is being made. They should be able to tell you, we're going to be taking data samples twice a week to see if your child is able to engage with their academic opportunities more regularly with less resistance, and what would that look like. You can also ask if your child is having school avoidance, for example, what counts as your child being at school that day? Do they have to be there the whole day? Are we looking at starting back on a minimum day or reduced schedule so that your child starts to build the resilience of going to school again? What specifically is being looked for? And then ask about the action items at the end of the meeting. Who's responsible for what? Who's going to be updating you as the parent or guardian? How are you going to be providing them updates if there's information you've promised to give them? What is the communication looking like moving forward? And who is your point of contact? That's all really important to make sure everybody stays on the same page. So we've talked about a lot today. I hope that you understand the role that you play in advocating for your child, regardless of any type of intervention or formalized plan they have at school, so that you are aware of the progress they're making and you're letting the school know that you are a collaborative partner in your child's education and that you want to support the school as well as your child at home to make sure that they're making the progress that everyone knows they're capable of. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you have more questions or want to work with me directly, the link is there. I also have a link for a freebie about meetings, how to have successful and effective meetings with the school as the parent. And it just kind of formalizes everything I said, gives you some areas to write things down so that you're ready for that meeting. If you have comments, leave them below. I'd love to hear what you're thinking and what successes you've had with your school.